Hey guys, Brent Hull Build Show, the most important video ever. Come watch it today on the Build Show. I did a story on my Instagram page and it blew up as far as comments of people saying, I didn't understand, I didn't know what was going on. What was I talking about? Talking about the epidemic of flat windows, okay? Maybe you already know what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the fact that you drive by these houses today and the windows are sitting right out on the face of the building and you're like, is that the way it's supposed to be? Is that really what's going on? So I went into this house and looked at these windows and realized what was going on. Here's our 100-year window, right? This is our double hung window. It's built for brick opening, okay? So that's what this brick mold is for. This piece is a brick mold. But if it wasn't, if it was for siding, we would just have this piece back here, okay? So it's just with brick and without brick. If we just do the comparison without brick, basically what happens is that if you look at that new windows today, and this is an example of a vinyl double hung window, the total depth on that frame is probably 2.5 inches, right? So not very big. If you look at our window, the depth, this one's without brick mold, is 8 inches, okay? So 2.5 versus 8. And if you just go to the back of the sash, maybe at a minimum it's 6, okay? So 2.5 versus 6. Now, that's the total depth of the jamb. So here's the way this looks. Here's a 2x4 wall, okay? And those things sit on a flange and they probably go into the house probably that far, okay? This is what those windows look like. And the reason why it looks so flat on those houses is because the distance from the face of the, let's just say there's a piece of trim out here and it's hardy siding and it's real thin, that the face from the outside of the trim to the piece of glass might be less than an inch, okay? Maybe 3/4, 7/8, maybe an inch, right? It's just there's just no depth there. Now, if you take our window and, let's just say it's from there, the top sash is almost as thick as their jamb, 1.5 inches. And then our bottom sash, by the time it goes in, is 4 inches back. So this house is amazing because it's built in an historic neighborhood and you look across the streets from these different houses and realize that all these other houses have this depth and this shadow lines and this detail that's awesome. And then you look at this other house and you're like, why is it so flat? So all these new window companies are coming out with these windows, and this is what I want you to fight against, and this is why it's so important, is because these window companies are coming out and they're cheapening their product. If you look at another project I was working on, this is the head and sill details, okay? So this is probably a 2x6 wall, but that jamb is still 3.5 inches thick. But look where that glass is, okay? And look where the face of the siding is. Okay, that's not more than an inch. And so the same thing is true with this up at the top. So it's being pushed out to the face of the building because why? It saves them money. They don't have to have as much jamb material. Look at our jamb. Look at the jamb on this window, right? I mean, that thing is monstrous, okay? It's huge, it's thick. All jambs don't have to be that thick, and when we build a casement window, it's not that thick, but it costs more because there is more to it, right? But the reason there is more to it is because there is an architectural beauty that goes along with these windows that really matters. I found that there's these people that were DMing me going, I never knew. I was about to buy windows for my house. I had no idea. So things to look for when you're looking at windows is, the reason I'm kind of critical of vinyl windows is not only because they don't last, okay, because they don't air seal very well, they're just not manufactured very well. Realize the vinyl window is the cheapest window you can buy. So to expect it to perform, to expect it to have architectural integrity, probably not going to get that. The second thing you need to look for is the wood, okay? Now, the reason we make our windows out of sapele is because that's the only wood that you can find that really stands up. Most modern manufacturers are making their windows out of finger jointed pine, okay? That finger joining, number one, is just a problem waiting to happen, okay? And if you've followed any of my videos and seen some of the things we've changed, where major manufacturers, we've pulled their windows out 15 years later because they've rotted out and or the finger joints are all coming apart, they're irreparable. You cannot repair those windows. And 10 years later, 15 years later, they say, oh, we don't make that window anymore. You're going to have to go with this one. It's closed. It doesn't match exactly, right? So because they're chasing after cheap, they're not making things the way they used to make them, and things just get worse and worse. So not only are windows sitting there right on the face of the building because they're eliminating jamb material, they're eliminating window material. All that really is vinyl holding in these thin pieces of glass, right? They've cheapened it down to the point where they say, well, what's the minimum amount of product that we need in order to get a window in a wall and make it as cheap as possible? These windows are $60, $70, right? This window is, $4,000 to $5,000. Now, you don't have to spend that much money for a window, but at least get something that's going to give your house integrity. At least the windows are the eyes of the house. They're one of the most important architectural features you can put in your house. So if you're going to spend money somewhere, that's a good place to start. Remember that when you're building a house and people are calling me, because of these Wednesday design videos, they're calling me asking for architectural help. And when they're establishing their budget, there's really three big areas where your money goes, okay? The roof, like whether you go with asphalt versus barrel tile or clay tile or slate or something like that, there's a big jump, okay? Cladding on the outside, whether you go with siding, hardy, crap, right? Bad stuff versus brick or stone or something like that, right? You're going to see a big jump there. And then third is windows. And if you go with cheap windows, you're going to save a lot of money, all right? If you go with hardy siding, hardy's actually expensive, which is kind of ironic that you're having to pay a lot of money for something that doesn't look very good. But getting a good material on the outside, those three things really drive the cost. I point that out because windows are huge. Windows are really important. Now, a divided light window, a true divided light window that has a integrity and a quality. And if you look at like this thing here, the mutton profiles, architects love this window because of this deep mutton profile, right? That mutton profile is over an inch thick off the glass. Today's windows, because they're putting insulated glass in there, they get flat, they get wide. And so they can't do true divided light anymore. They do simulated divided light, meaning they tape, okay, the wood onto the face of the glass, right? If I told you, hey, your window there, they taped it together, right? You'd be like, what? What are you talking about? They're taping things together, okay? That's not the way that we're going to build something to last by doing that. So the great thing is, guys, you don't need to spend, $5,000 on a new window. You can spend a few hundred to maybe $1,000 restoring your historic windows. If you've got a pre-1940 house, okay, meaning your house was built before 1940, most likely you have old growth wood windows in your house. What that means is that old growth wood is gold, okay? It doesn't rot. There's no sapwood in it. It's all heartwood. The heartwood is just awesome. And so whenever we have old growth wood, we always try to save it as best we can because it's so good. If you're thinking of putting in a window like this because you have windows like this that are maybe needing to be restored, needing to be fixed up, I'm telling you, I can't tell you number of people that I go and talk to about their windows and they go, oh, I just thought they were lost. I thought they were ruined. They're not. They're far from being ruined. In fact, they can take a ton of abuse. All the glazing putty can fall out. All the paint can fall off, and they can still, last for 10s and 20s and 30s of years. Remember, restoring windows is a big piece of this, and certainly when you try to put this in an historic house, it is just all wrong. As you're planning your house, as you're thinking about that, don't think that you can cheat through the window decision and get something good. Here's a house, a recent one I did that shows, this window and this wall. Now what they've got is they've got aluminum clad wood window. Okay, that's kind of the middle ground. Is the way they get around the bad woods is they clad it in aluminum. And so this jamb is very thin. They've got a little sill that snaps into the outside, right? Notice how thin it is, so that the architectural feature, okay, of the window is, by the time they put their sill in there, this dimension is maybe, what is that? With the sash, it's probably 2.5 inches, right? Because their sash comes up to here. This vinyl window, they have a big fanel, so it looks about 2 inches. Let's just say that's 2.5 inches, okay? If we look at our window here and measure our dimension with the sash, right? So we go from the bottom of the sill to the top of the sash, we're talking about 6 inches there, right? And so the difference in shadow lines and details, where if you look at, and I was trying to draw it over here on this one, but you think about, by the time you put a stone sill in there, by the time you put our big sill, which is almost as big as their whole window, and then by the time you put our sash in there, you know, this dimension, so if you put a sub sill in here, if you put our sash in there, if you put our sill in there, we're now, right, more like 6 inches, right? So almost 3 times as big. Now, why does that matter? Because when you look at this from this side, each of those steps back is a shadow line. It's just like when the Renaissance artist discovered perspective. It was just like, oh, that's what makes it look real. That's what makes it look good. Putting shadow lines, putting depths on the front of your house really is important. It's why we can save the world if we just put good windows on our houses. Quit putting these thin windows on the face of your house because there's no depth. Get the historic windows, get the wood windows. Don't throw out your wood windows, and certainly don't throw them out and put that in, right? So you can restore your windows, you can get them going beautiful again, but that's my admonition. That's how we're going to save the world. I'm Brent Hull. Thanks for watching.